What kinds of things are we doing in Chicago vis-a-vis your agency and the federal government to help the people of the city?
Well, in Chicago, we've actually gone so far as to put FBI agents with Chicago police officers in squad cars to try and focus on some of the predators who are driving this violence, the gangbangers who think that they operate freely. So we do gang task forces, we do drug task forces, and as I said, we operate even on a ad hoc basis to try and lock up some of the repeat offenders. And the idea there is to try and change behavior by ripping out the worst and convincing the rest you should not have a firearm with you if you are a prohibited person.
So as I look at the challenge of gun violence in the city of Chicago, and I see that there are, I mean, if we took a map of the city of Chicago and we put reluctantly little stars where people had been murdered due to gun violence, we would see, do you see it as, do you know or have you seen, is it the whole city of Chicago? When I look at it, I'm not that worried about my grandson walking in Portage Park to the park. I'm worried, but not that worried as I would be in other neighborhoods of the city of Chicago. So what other dimensions are there that relate to gun violence, as you've seen?
Yeah, I know the city of Chicago pretty well, having gone to law school and been there many, many times. And the story of Chicago is a lot like the story of a bunch of cities around the country. It's localized. The violence is heavily concentrated. Chicago, primarily south, some west, obviously. And it is groups of primarily young men who are carrying firearms when they're prohibited by law from carrying them on the streets, and that inevitably leads all human encounters ratchet up to the most serious available weapon. And so what would have been a fist fight when you were a kid today is a shootout because the gun is there. And what we in law enforcement are trying to do is change that behavior. These kids may not be well educated, but they're very good at cost-benefit analysis. And the idea is to force a cost-benefit analysis. That gun should be a huge liability in the eye of that felon, that drug dealer, that drug addict. And that's the way we hope to change behavior.
So, Mr. Director, just 15 seconds and I'll finish up, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Director, there are a group of us, in the Hispanic Congressional Caucus and African-American members of color. We'd like to have a roundtable discussion with you, a conversation from different parts of the United States, and not in such a formal setting as this, in which you might be able to share with us how better in communities of color in America where the gun violence is so rampant, you might give us some of your thoughtful input. Would you agree to do that with us? Thank you so much.